Thinking. All right, we are live. Welcome to Fridays Live. It's April 4th, 2025, and we're going to talk on Facebook and YouTube about genealogy today. Ellie, we get to do a double header today. Are you excited?
I'm always excited to do these with you, Jen. I love coming on Family History Expert Hour to talk with an actual expert, which I am not. So it's always nice to bounce ideas off you,
do
Jen.
that.
And I'm so glad it's Friday as well. It's been a lovely week, but I'm so ready for the weekend. I would also like to introduce to everybody watching the newest member of the Findmypast community. This is Vinny.
All curled up. Vinny, he is so cute.
He's currently upside down. He is in desperate need of a nap, but I hope you will all welcome him. So yeah, hope you guys are all good. I'm just going to pop the link into the Findmypast Family History Forum and onto Blue Sky. So bear with me while I do that, and I pass
You're
back
fine.
to you, Jen.
Yeah, I am glad to see people are starting to comment. That's great. And I am gonna just straight up admit I'm so jealous of anybody who says it's sunny, and that is so far Gina and Andrea and Karen and Andrew and Kim and Janet. It's snowing at my house. Now this is not abnormal for this part of my part of the world, but I really wanted sunshine and I didn't get it. So yeah, please send some sun my way. That is a kind of a strange thing to ask of people in the UK to someone in Colorado, now that I think about it, but I want some sunshine. But it is spring and our plants are starting to pop back up, and my lilac bush is starting to grow in the backyard, which I'm really happy about. I love my lilac bush. So we're cruising along. It's been kind of a long week, I'm going to be honest. So it's really fun to be online with you guys and chat for a little while. Gina's also getting a cool breeze as well as the sun. That sounds kind of perfect, actually. But we're going to talk about all sorts of stuff today, but we're really going to focus on the 1939 register. Hope everybody's ready for that, because it's free right now. On Findmypast, access to the 1939 register is available for free for a short time. And that's exciting. So we hope that everybody's able to make some good discoveries and learn about their World War II ancestors, even more so than maybe you have in the past, right? There's lots of little tidbits and tricks and almost like, I don't know, details that people don't think about with the 1939 register. So we're going to cover some of that today and make sure that everybody knows all the little bits, all the little hidden secrets of 1939.
It's so true because it's such an amazing resource. Like we were just discussing.
It really is. Like it's just, I mean, it's not a census. So it's not, in many ways, it's not as detailed as a typical census, but at the same time, it is detailed in other ways, and it just is extremely important and very valuable.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, question of the week. Oh, there's Vinny. Oh, he's so cute. As we get started on our session today, what is your family World War II story? What have you learned? What have you found? What do you know? What oral history has been shared? What images do you have and pictures and medals and uniforms and other types of ephemera? What's your family's World War II story? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to start, though, of course, like we always do, with new records and new newspapers. We're going to say hi, though, first to Jan and Lynn and Heather and Maxine over in Spain, cloudy and rainy Spain. Yeah, I'm just checking in on the comments. Jan says it's gorgeous in Shropshire right now. Still jealous. All right.
It's quite nice here, actually. It's 19 degrees in North Wales.
19 degrees.
You're doing in your head.
I'm doing it in the head. I'm like, oh, that sounds nice. That sounds good. 19 degrees sounds quite nice to me right now. So I'm going to share my screen and put some info up on the slide. Let me make sure we get that so it's readable. How's that look, Ellie?
Yeah, that looks really good. Lovely looking slide.
Thank you. So new records this week. Through our partnership with the Wiltshire Family History Society and the Trowbridge Wiltshire Family History Society, we have published a whole big collection of Wiltshire records, which is some really, really cool stuff in here. Now, these are all transcriptions because the original materials are in the local archives. But the members of the Family History Society have gone in and created those transcriptions and made them available on Findmypast so that people can find them. And I personally think that it is overdue that we acknowledge and recognize the work of the Family History Societies because they do incredible things. They have for many, many decades, and volunteers are kind of, everything that the back of digital genealogy is built off of. And we just want to stop every once in a while and remember and thank our partners at the Family History Society and the Federation of Family Histories. That entire community is just exceptional. So if you are a volunteer with one of your local family history societies, thank you, thank you, thank you for the work that you do, not just from the perspective of like publishing on Findmypast, but just as a genealogist, from one genealogist to another, the work that you do is absolutely essential. We couldn't do what we do without you. And so grateful as a researcher. I don't know, that I could go on for a while, but I should probably stop. Wiltshire Family History Society this month has provided records on police officers, the Great Western Railway Hospital records, census list starting in 1650. You guys, 1650, that's incredible. Settlement examinations, and then the Swindon Advertiser newspaper notices covering the latter half of the 1800s. The census list I want to talk about for a second. All of the census in the 2 volumes are pre-1841, with the exception of Woodford, which has a second part, which was compiled in 1887. So that's the one that goes to the latter end of this time frame. But think about that. All of these are from pre-1841, when of course the national census gets so valuable for us. The latter one, the 1887 record, was presumably created as part of the Jubilee celebration. So that's probably why that one exists. Many of them were compiled in connection with the national census. So 1801, 1811, 1821, and 1831. So it's like a local version of the national material. I wanted to note a couple in particular, some that are kind of really unique in there, right? So there's some that are really early, obviously, 1650. And then there's some that go kind of for different reasons, right? For taxes or other purposes. One example is from Steeple Ashton. They have the 1826 census, which was probably compiled for bread distribution. Bread, right? And likely again in 1827 for the same reason. So that census, those 2 census rather, probably only contain kind of the less well-off inhabitants of the local community, but it's still such essential information that was captured. When I was reading through all this material, it was like a bread census. That's literally what it is. And that to me is absolutely fascinating. Like, it doesn't get any more interesting than that.
I'm going to have to go check that out. I have no Wiltshire ancestors, but
I don't
just
either,
out
but
of
I was like,
curiosity, I want to go and have a look.
yeah. Now, I will note, of course, all of these are transcriptions, so you don't get any of the original images. But when you do get a transcription, I pulled in an example. So this is, let me get my cursor out of the way there. This is the part of the Great Western Railway Hospital records. So this is a man named Thomas Hancock, who was born in 1829. He's 70 years old when he goes into the hospital. He's in the hospital for 90 days related to an injury to his foot, which you can see at the bottom is kind of in parentheses at work. But it also tells us how long he spent in the hospital, why he was in the hospital, but then he said, and his occupation and all sorts of other information. Then it also, of course, gives us the archive and the archival reference, which is super important because then we can go back to the Swindon Central Library and we can say, hey, we would like to look at the original annual reports from this Medical Fund Society. Here's your archival reference. So that you can get that original image, right? So these transcriptions are incredibly useful in and of themselves, but what they do even more is lead us to those original images and original records so we can see that with our own eyes. So if you have Wiltshire ancestors, it's a bumper week for you.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever said bumper before in a sentence.
These are really detailed transcripts. It's
Mm.
pretty good.
They are. The society just did a really phenomenal job on this information. So, I mean, they've captured, I think, just about everything they could probably capture, right, in a
Yeah.
transcript. It's really cool.
There's some excitement in the comments as well about Wiltshire Records. Daphne says her hubby's family are from Wiltshire, hoping to find something new, which is excellent. Andrew said a moment ago that he'd already found a cousin in the Great Western Railway Hospital records.
Fab.
Excellent.
That's so good. And I'm glad you're telling me that because when I'm screen sharing like this, I can't actually see the comments. That's the way my,
And
oh, wait.
then
Oh,
Eileen says, late joining you, but excited to hear about this as one of my great grandparents and his line for centuries was from Wiltshire. So any
that's
of you with Wiltshire
exciting.
ancestors, we hope you find some fun stuff this weekend.
Yeah. And I just clicked on something and my screen changed and now I can see the comments. I don't know what I did, but I'm gonna have to try and remember it because now I can see both, which is super exciting. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, let's talk about newspapers as well, because we of course have new newspapers. Um, a huge range. I ran out of time to look at these, but what's the one at the bottom, Ellie? It's Welsh.
My best pronunciation is chlorianid. I don't know what the translation is,
Okay,
unfortunately.
that's fair. That's okay. You don't have to know everything.
I
But
can go
we've
and look it
got
up though.
a number of titles from Orkney and Shetland, ranging a huge number of years. Note that some of those go back to like 1824. And then the Orkney and Shetland American, I'm going to have to look at just because I don't know what it is and I want to. So lots of new newspapers. These are just the new ones. We also have a list of updated titles, which I did not put on slides. But if you want to know more about that, you can go to the Find My Past blog or the British Newspaper Archive blog, and it will tell you all about it.
Chloriani means to
Mm.
weigh or to assess something. So that's probably what it's derived from. It's like the assessor or something like that. My
Huh.
Welsh is patchy at best.
Interesting. I wonder if I mean, kind of automatically makes me think of mining, right? Welsh,
Potentially, yeah.
weighing things,
Yeah.
assessing. Hmm, I don't know. We'll have to go to the newspaper and find out. Perhaps that is what I will do with my snowy afternoon today. All right. We mentioned actually, do we want to do a couple question of the week first? Let's do that before
Yeah,
we
let's
go
do it. I've been
on any
starring
further.
some for us.
Excellent. Let me take that down for a second. We'll go right up to the top. Kim, I ended up researching my house and the neighbors in 1939. Son next door ended up training in the US, and there was a newspaper article about him meeting a US general. Oh, well, that's interesting.
That's pretty cool.
That is cool. It's it's handy when your ancestors get connected to a celebrity or like a big name of some kind. It's really convenient. But at the same time, then that kind of like takes over your research, right? Like how do you keep the well, I like because you can continue to research that famous person and be like, what were they doing and where were they? And like there's more information likely about them and their activities, but then it's like, oh, get back to my ancestor. I don't know. That's my thing. All right. I can
It's
totally.
very tempting to carry on with the famous person, but you're so
That's what
right
I'm
though.
looking for. Tempting.
Tempting. But you're so right. Like if you find somebody who it's like somebody in your family who for some reason crosses paths with somebody that's well known, that's
Yeah.
great for you. Because it can help you pinpoint the ancestor. You might get their own words, you might get a photograph.
Hmm.
So yeah, if that happens, that's like gold
Or even
dust.
just like photographs around the event that was happening, right? The circumstances in which they met, you're more likely to find photographic or video evidence of like just like the general environment. Yeah. uh I'm rambling. I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm not very focused today. Gina, my dad was a medic and he was with the liberation force that went into Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. He was only 19. Hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah. And for a 19-year-old.
Yeah, to
I'm
see that.
okay. So, I mean, my daughter is 16, not very far away from that, and I'm trying to imagine what it would be like for her to walk into something like that. Yeah, that's heavy. Gina, thanks for sharing. Um, it, we talk about war and records and genealogy, and we tend to think, oh, that military records are so great. It's so easy, I think, to forget the reality of that
Mm.
experience, right? Especially maybe, and I say this as someone who's never served in the armed forces, maybe especially as someone who's never served, right? Because I don't have that real life experience to lean back on and put myself in their shoes, right? More realistically.
Yeah,
Um,
I think you're absolutely right. Like, just always take a step back and think about that lived in
yeah,
experience. Um, a little bit of empathy goes an awful long way when
it
looking
sure
at family
does.
history records. Like, it can very easily, you're just looking at like a series of facts, but those series of facts, if you let your brain work a little bit harder, to sort of actually put yourself in their shoes, I think that can be hugely beneficial. It's quite hard to do when you look at instances like this, but I think it's hugely beneficial for understanding their experiences, as you said.
Well, and I think it's especially important with something like a census or the 1939 register, right? Which to us as genealogists is so routine. We rely on that information all the time, and we just kind of go, "Oh, there's my census. Thank you very much. Here's my basic facts." But it is telling us more of a story if we give ourselves the opportunity to see it. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna keep going, Ellie. Kim says, "Oh, I already did this one. I'm sorry. I'm repeating myself." Karen, direct family mostly avoided World War II service because of age. One grandfather was a fireman. I have a photo of him. My other grandfather was an ARP warden at work. He worked in insurance and went to New York to work for a year. He sailed on the Queen Mary, 1944, and his fellow passengers are an interesting list of those. Oh, an interesting list of who's who. Got it. I thought your comment
Oh, I
got
can
cut off. I was looking
imagine.
for the rest of it. Yeah, I bet it was. I bet it was. Queen Mary, 1944. Yeah. That's an interesting fan club style research project, isn't it? That would be quite
Yeah. Oh
something.
my
I've never
gosh.
thought about researching passengers on a vessel like that in isolation, but that would be fun.
Well, we've actually got on Find My Pass, we've got this thing. So if you open up a passenger list record, I don't know if it's for all passenger lists or whether it's just for certain ones, but if you scroll down, it'll tell you on the transcript how many other people on that voyage, and then you can
Hmm.
literally, it like with the click of a button, you can go and see a list of everybody else who's on that
Everybody that was
voyage.
on that boat.
It's
Yeah,
such a handy little tool, and I
it's
don't think I
very
don't think we talk
convenient.
about it enough.
No, you're right. I mean, we launched that. I can still remember actually the day when we talked about it internally for the first time, and they showed it to us because one of our colleagues at the time messaged me and said something like, "I haven't seen you this excited for months." And I was just like, "Yes, passenger list data, like at the click of a button. This is so cool." Still stands out in my memory. So yeah, that's quite an experience. ARP wardens too are particularly interesting, I think, for me in terms of research. It's one of those historical angles that is really unique to the UK. And really makes that story kind of a standout, right? Like any person that's got ARP next to their name, I'm going to be curious about.
Speaking of that, in case anybody is interested, some of our colleagues have published some new pieces on the Findmypast blog about certain civilian roles in World War II. From, like, I think local defence volunteers,
Hmm.
voluntary police officers, that sort of thing. I'll find you the link and I'll pop it in the chat just in case anybody's interested. Even if you don't have an ancestor who did one of these civilian volunteer roles, like Jen said, utterly fascinating.
And they've made it searchable.
Yeah.
So you can now search on 1939 by one of these civilian roles. So if you wanted to see Karen, who your grandfather was possibly serving with in the ARP in his local community, you can search by that and cluster it by location, and you're off and running, which is very cool. All right, one or two more, and then we'll start talking through my slides, I guess. Janet says her late mother was a factory worker, and it was hit by a V-1 rocket. That's just crazy. My dad was in the Royal Artillery, didn't go abroad, only as far as the Shetland Islands. My aunt was in the ATS. Unproven was an aunt who drove ambulances. Oh wow, that's Janet. That's a lot. That's like it's a book. That's a book right there. Just your World War II family is a book. That's so cool. I wonder, I just have all sorts of questions. I want to know where the factory was, if she was in it when it was hit, if people were injured or lost their lives. I want to know the impact of that V1 rocket. Um, I want to know the story of the Royal Artillery, even though he didn't go abroad. Like whatever he was doing at home was also very important for the war effort, and we can't overlook that either, right? Just not going abroad doesn't mean that it's any less significant. Obviously, I don't know that much about the ATS. Ellie, do you? I have lots
Um,
of questions.
the auxiliary transport service, I
Service, yeah.
believe my grandfather's auntie is in the
Hmm.
ATS here in North Wales. Um, I just heard that from another family member. I don't actually have any documentary evidence. That is the extent of my knowledge.
Fair, fair. I don't know if I've ever seen any documentary evidence on the ATS. Janet, if you have additional information on records for the ATS, I would love to know about it. Throw it in the comments. And if not, I'll start Googling when I get off this call. All right.
Yeah, we're getting lots of
Um,
questions of the week. This is really good. Keep them
yeah,
coming, guys. We
good.
could we could carry
Yeah.
on doing the whole session with just these.
That would be fine. Yeah. Let's go to this one because this is a question. And I want to try and address this. Comes from Scorpion over on the YouTube side. There any records of where a particular land girl would have been serving? And in fact, there are. There are women's land army cards, and they are available on Find My Past and the National Archives website. And they will show you when she enlisted, where she served, and in many cases it's just the region, but often will include specific locations. Um, Sometimes they will have little tidbits of information like she was transferred, or she got married and her name is now this. And then typically includes the date when she left the service as well. So yes, you're looking for women's land army cards on Find My Past. And if we're tricky about it, we can share the link. I don't know if we're that tricky, Ellie.
Already gone in the chat.
Oh, look at you.
I'm just that
Thank you,
good.
Ellie. You are just that good.
This is why it's so
Fantastic
handy
links.
this is why it's so handy like doing these with two people. It's like one person can talk and the
Totally.
other person can go find links.
Just they could go do the things. Yes, it's very convenient. Great question. Thanks.
That was a good
Um,
question.
that is a good question. Let's talk a little bit then about 1939. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be like, I have been using this for years and we know all about it. And I'm trying to control my mouse while I talk. What is happening with my mouse right now? Ellie, you talk while I find my mouse.
We're going to talk. Oh, do you want me to talk about the 1939 register?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
As we said at the beginning, I think it's an incredible resource. As I'm sure Jen is going to go into in a moment once she gives me the thumbs up that she has got control of her cursor. I actually came on board Find My Past when we launched it. So this was November of
really?
2015. Yeah, this is how I joined Find My Past. I was brought on as a temporary customer support advisor to assist
For the launch.
with the additional queries that would happen around launch. Exactly. And I only did email at the time. And I think I worked for Find My Past for a week and a half. And it was very, very busy. And then I came back 3 or 4 months later. I think I was asked to come back, and then I've never left since.
And we're so glad.
They haven't got rid of me.
We're very happy about that. I have actually managed to share a link in the chat myself now.
Oh, you have? Well
To this
done.
page, actually. It is free to access the 1939 register. We're kind of, getting ready and celebrating VE Day and the 80th anniversary. And so this is all a big part of that effort and that acknowledgement. And I'm going to say Liam's in the comments because he said the rest is history on your little story there, which is great. So for those of you who have not used the 1939 register, maybe are new to family history, please, please, please take a look at it. We would love to have you access it while it's free and available to you. The materials on the 1939 register are really actually very, very helpful. Like we talked about at the beginning, that it's census-like, but it's not actually a census. And the 1939 register was originally created, at least, as a way to register the individuals across the United Kingdom, the Isle of Man, and the Channel Islands. It was used for issuing national identity and ration cards. order conscription, and later became the foundation of the institution, or the basis rather, for the NHS, the National Health Service. So 1939 register, although it has 1939, the title obviously does not stop there. It was an active, live document for many decades after. And that makes it particularly helpful, especially when researching women, because it includes both their maiden name and their married name, which we'll show you as we go through. So, of course, 3rd September 1939, the United Kingdom declares war on Nazi Germany. And the 1939 register was taken just a couple of weeks later across all of those major population centers. Um, so they could understand the population, understand what they were working with. Findmypast is the official online home of the 1939 register. So we release the records that newly passed the 100-year rule on a quarterly basis before any other family history website. So if you are looking for someone who has recently deceased, and you're looking for their information to kind of update in the 1939 register, Findmypast is the best way to do that, because we get that information out fastest, because we were the ones who originally published it. Let's take a look. The search page for the 1939 register, the advanced search page in particular, is incredibly helpful. And we're going to go through a couple of like best tips. This is my first one. The idea here is to start with what you know, obviously, but you can also do a lot of really extraordinary and crafty searches, using the search functionality on the advanced search. You want to think about all of the little tidbits, and I have found people in so many different ways. It's just insane, right? A first name and a birth year, and the fact that they were, an ARP warden, like, or their street. The idea of combining all of these different filters to create kind of this really complicated search, but also find little tidbits of people that you just don't know about. You don't know enough about to search by name in kind of the stereotypical way that we search through census records. And that is brilliant. The search page actually goes a little bit lower, right? So this is the rest of it. And I'm going to leaving these on the screen so that you guys can see them, if you haven't before. There are a number of ways in which to search, like by occupation, or by optional keyword, or as we talked about, their civilian role, or their special interest group, which we'll talk about as well, which is also fantastic. We can search by institution. We can search by address, which I think Karen just put in chat. She did. Love that you can search by address. Me too, Karen. Totally. This just, I know I'm repeating myself now, but the 1939 search advanced search features are just phenomenal, right? They really allow us to find people that are kind of hard to find in kind of that traditional name search. So we want to think about that. My second, you know what? I should flip the screen. Here we go. So my first suggestion, really, beyond the advanced search and getting to know that, is to browse the register. And I know for many of us that feels a little bit like unnecessary, but making yourself familiar with the register itself, how it's formatted, how you can search by county or piece number or the ED letter code. All of that time of browsing actually gives yourself the chance to really understand the record and its purpose, and allows you to interpret the register in a much more comprehensive way when you find your family in it. So that's my first suggestion, is actually browse the register. And you can do that on Findmypast. You can just go to the browse feature and do that really easily. My second tip, which we've already kind of hinted at, is to search search by address. Right? It's particularly useful if you're doing house history, or like we talked about earlier, kind of looking at like a local community and all of their ARP wardens or something to that effect. All you need is to go to the address page. Under the search dropdown, you enter the name of any street in England and Wales, and you'll be shown the list of houses in that street in 1939. Now, even just today, we had a customer query come in about an address search, and they were looking for a particular location, and were able to help us understand that it was actually transcribed incorrectly. We're not afraid to admit those mistakes, but we are very grateful to people who tell us, like, actually, what you've done here is you've replaced the house name with the street name. You've convoluted the two. That's really useful because now we can fix it and we can make sure that it is um, actually just um, do I need to go to specs favor or the slides fuzzy? Sorry, that just I was like, oh, what's going on in the comments? Um, when you find something like that and you send it in to us as a correction, we can get it fixed for everybody. So that example that I was looking at this morning, where it was a house name versus a street name, it's already been fixed and published on the register. So everybody now, the correct information is out there. Um, we do try to respond to those kinds of things as soon as possible. So think about that, especially with address search, I think, because you know, it's pretty routine to transcribe John Smith, but it's much more unusual to do a street name and something like that. So you know, think about that as you go through the address search.
Speaking of, letting us know about mistakes, I spotted somebody on Facebook earlier this week who said that if you try and search, was it Middlesbrough in the address search for 1939, it comes up with no results. And I thought,
Hmm,
really? And I went and tried it, and this person was 100% correct. So now our data team have a ticket for that, and they're going to fix it. So
yeah,
whoever that was that told us, I can't remember their name. Thank you very much, because again, we can fix this for you, and we make it better for everybody else as well. So
that's
yeah,
right.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah, we are very, very grateful for those types of communications from our customers for sure. Um, Tip number 3 is to search for an ancestor's birth date. So, as we've mentioned a couple times, right, the 1939 register isn't a census. It's different, although it looks and feels like a census in a lot of ways. But they did record full birth dates. So, that, of course, allows you to pinpoint the exact person that you're searching for very quickly and easily. Of course, not all of us have an exact, complete date of birth. So we can also kind of use our search parameters, our give and take years to find approximate results, narrow that down, and then actually obtain the full birth date, which is fantastic. And then the fourth suggestion on this slide, we have a few more to share, is to look for other household members. So if you don't know the exact circumstances, or if someone has a really common name, right, like a John Smith, but you know that their wife is Isabella, maybe that is a combination that you need to be searching on. And you can do that, of course, in the advanced search collection. Um, and so you can search for both, right? You search for John Smith with other household member Isabella, or the other way around, which is sometimes useful as well. Um, and find the family that way. Anything else that I missed on these, Ellie, that you want to add to?
I don't think so. I think these are all top tier tips. I'm going to use that
Right?
phrase from now on. Jen's
Top
top
tier
tier
tips.
tips.
Right? Let's
Um,
go to the second set.
yeah.
Um, we need to know that the 1939 register is actually incomplete. There are some missing areas. It's thought that they were missed during the original national registration process, which occurred in September 1939. And so they don't appear in the physical or the online records. There is a list online um, on Findmypast of all of those known locations. So you can easily access that. You can access it through our blog, through the 1939 register, help pages on the search page itself. And I'll show you that in a minute. If you go down past the search, there's links to useful tips. Ellie, you definitely looked like you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say I'm going to go find that page and share it in the comments
All
with the
right.
missing
Okay, cool.
pieces.
Yeah,
Known
perfect.
missing places. That's exactly what I was after.
Known
Fun
missing
fact:
places.
my granddad and his family do not appear. Um,
Really?
I have even raised this with the National Archives, and they cannot find it.
Wow.
Really sad.
That is
Really
sad.
sad. But hey ho.
Yeah. It's, I mean, yeah. Also important, of course, to acknowledge that this doesn't include anybody who is currently in active service. It's civilians. So, and I should have probably started with that a little bit, but yeah, it does not include military services. So if your person was already serving or enlisted, then they won't be in the 1939 register because remember its original purpose was for registration of the population It was national identity cards, ration cards, and to order conscription when they got to that point. So keep that in mind, that if you were already in the military, you didn't need to, right? You didn't need to be on the register. Okay. The next top tip is to understand the institution codes. They're kind of listed all over the register. If people are recorded as a member of an institution rather than a household, you'll see them categorized with a variety of different letters. There's an O for officer, a V for visitor, S for servant, P for patient, and I for inmate. These codes really can help you identify family members who were in hospitals, asylums, or workhouses at the time. So be aware of those. All those little notations and um, lines and arrows and all the little stuff that's written in on the pages, they mean something. And it's important for us to understand what they mean. We want to learn a little bit about the social history, right? The 1939 register is, of course, not just the original records, but also maps and statistics from this period as well. The maps offer 3 different historical perspectives for the area you're looking for. And on the Findmypast platform, it allows you to show the exact address of the household or the institution that you're viewing. Um, you want to make sure that you understand all of the bits and pieces that come alongside the household that you're looking at, right? And I mean, y'all know how much I love maps. So get those maps out and examine them for all they're worth, because it's worth your time. I wish I had somebody in the 1939 register and the 1921 census, because I am so jealous of the maps and I don't have anybody that I can find. I know it is sad. I wish my ancestors had stayed in England a little bit longer. It's fine. I am who I am because of it. It's okay. It's all okay. Uh, Last on this list is to crack those codes. As you dig into the register further, right? As you kind of understand it better um, and interpret it in different ways, and then this kind of feeds back to the institution codes. You also want to understand all the other codes, the enumeration district codes that appear on the transcripts and the images. There are a number of different codes that you might encounter. So on the search page on Findmypast, and Ellie, if you can grab this for us as well, there is again a section down at the bottom underneath the search. It's called Search Tips. And there's a little category in there that says, what help can I get to better understand the search results? And that content, that writing, is created by our in-house experts and our partners at the National Archives. So they write it together, and that allows you to understand the records that you find in greater depth. So you can really get a feel for what is actually being documented on the register itself.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think one of the things that I often speak about with 1939 is, yes, it's not a census, and even if you think about how it's structured and how it was taken. So most censuses are, the name of your village, your town, or your city, then the county, and things like that. That's normally how it happens in your typical English, Welsh, often Scottish censuses as well. But for the 1939 register, it's slightly different. It's done by like street enumeration district and then the county. So if you go in and you're trying to search for like Sheffield, for example, Sheffield might not come up as a town, but it might come up as like an enumeration district. So I've just put a link to the enumeration districts in the comments. Perfect. It is well worth having a look at those and just understanding all of those. And then what Jen said about cracking the codes. So your enumeration districts with things like urban district, rural district.
Yep.
And I can't remember the other one off the top of my head. But yeah, familiarize yourselves with those, because they will save you a world of pain, particularly when you're searching for an address.
Yeah, and it's important to know these things, right? If you have a family member in the 1939 register, you probably have several. So the more you learn about the record set, the more you are going to be able to interpret it and develop it for all of your ancestors, not just like one person, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great point.
Okay, let's take a look. So one of the questions that I see the most on things like Facebook, especially, is what's with all the black lines, right? Why are they closed? Why are the records officially closed? And that is really just a question of privacy law. In the UK, privacy law is 100 years. So you have to, the the information on the record has to be at least 100 years ago, or it cannot be open to the public, right? And that's for personal privacy. But there are ways to open these records. So if you find a household and you think someone is underneath one of those black lines that you know is already deceased, you can inform us. You can tell us that, and that closed record will be able to be opened. So you have to provide a copy of their death certificate. But there are instructions on how to do this on the Find My Past website, and I think on the national, yeah, I'm sure on the TNA website as well. It shows you how to do this. So closed records, just to recap this, closed records on the 1939 register are officially closed due to privacy regulations that prevent us from publishing any record of someone who was born less than 100 years ago and is potentially still alive. The register was updated all the way up until 1991. So the record of anyone who died after 1991 might still be closed, right? So you have to think about this, again, was not a one-time shot. This is not just information from 1939. It stretches all the way through to the early 1990s. So if you find a closed record for someone you know has died, you can request it to be opened by providing a copy of the death certificate. Likewise, if you discover the record of a person who is still living that has been opened in error, you can request it to be closed if you want to, right? So it works both ways. So if a record is closed, you won't be able to find it when searching. So that means you need to search for all of the other members of the family or a household. If all of them are theoretically still alive, then the entire household, of course, will be closed and won't be searchable in the register. So for some of us, it's a waiting game, right? But if if you know that person is deceased, you can request it to be opened. We get that question a lot.
Yeah, we
I see
really
it on
do.
Facebook like almost every day. Which is good because it means people are using the register and asking questions. So that's a really positive thing. But we want to be really clear about that. Okay.
I'm
So
just going to go and let the dog out to the toilet. I'll be right back.
sure. Oh yeah, of course. Go doggy, go. So just on that topic, I'm just going to Jean just commented that they find it frustrating. You have to provide a death certificate when you know they've been dead for some years. Okay, I get that. I get the frustration. But it is ensuring that all of us, whether it's a Find My Past representative or a member of our community, a customer like yourself, a researcher, are actually compliant with privacy laws as well. So, and yeah, I get that it's frustrating. I get that it can be annoying. But at the same time, I also kind of understand why it's that way. Although, of course, as I've already said, I don't have anybody in the 1939 register. I've never had to deal with it personally myself. So maybe I don't understand your position and am not empathetic enough. I will keep that in mind. All right. That's closed or redacted records. Hopefully that helps people understand. 1939 register is something that we have been working on actively for a while, right? We published it and then we just keep continuing to improve it. So one of the ways that we've done that is to add new search filters. Gosh, when did we do this? A year ago, maybe? Maybe a little bit longer than that. We added the ability to search and filter by special interest groups. Now, keep in mind, these are the words and the terms that were used on the historical records. So you see heavy worker, evacuee, blind, deaf, disabled, refugee, etc. You can use this as a filter to search. So if you're looking for children who are evacuated, you may, especially in a particular community, right? Like who are all the evacuated children in this little town up north somewhere? This might be a really great way for you to do that because they should be indicated as such on the register. So we added this a while ago. And then just recently, like we were talking about, we also added a filter like this for the civilian roles, which I did not get a screenshot of, but I probably should have. But these filters on our advanced search are actually really, really useful. So if you haven't played around with these and you have interest in those areas, I do recommend. A couple other things to bear in mind. I've said a couple times, underneath all of the search filters, if you scroll down the page, you will find all of this information and then some, right? This is the content that we were referring to earlier with how do I how do I understand what I'm looking at? How do I understand the record? What does this mean? What are these codes? How do I submit a death certificate to open a record? All of that is underneath the search. So you read through this material, there's actually a lot of information here, including the enumeration districts that we were talking about, the list of locations that is not included in the register. All of that is there. One of the ways that we kind of connect this content so that people can find it is in the margin on every record set. There's this column that says useful links and resources. Now, the 1939 register column is really long. There's a whole lot of useful links and resources. So you see a few here at the top, right? Known missing places from 1939, the browse feature itself, the ability to order General Register Office certificates. If you need a death certificate, we link directly into that site so you know exactly how to get to that, the list of enumeration districts. At the very bottom of that list is a page that's called 1939 Register Original Forms. And I really like this. When I started learning about the 1939 register, I found it really useful to see the forms kind of in their original standard format, blank, so that I'm not distracted by the handwriting and the notations and everything else. And so when you click on these, you actually get the image of kind of the header columns, the instructions, which is what this one is. To me, it's incredibly helpful to read through this content. Again, knowing and understanding the register, the record set that you're using is important to be able to interpret it correctly. So I always kind of work my way through all of this information kind of as quickly as I can. And then actually, when I was prepping notes for today, I kind of went back and actually reread some of these. And I was like, oh yeah, I'd forgotten about that little bit. So it's, you know, there's a lot of information out there available to us. We should kind of keep ourselves on our toes a little bit. And I have to reread stuff like this all the time. So um, that's I suppose, there's a lot of people who are probably like, oh, I'm not going to be bothered, and that's fine, that's okay. um it For many people, the exciting bit is finding the ancestor in the record set, right? And I understand that. That's of course important. I get excited too when I find people, especially people who are tricky to find, right? It's a real moment of success and acknowledgement, like, yeah, I did it. But interpreting them in that on that piece of paper is just as important to me. So I am kind of dorky about it and I read through all the instructions.
I mean, it's
How's the
nice to be
doggo?
able to. He's fine.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree with what you said, Jen, because it comes back to what we said earlier about the putting yourself in your ancestors' shoes. Like at some
Yeah.
point, these people would have sat down, maybe around their little kitchen table. The heads of the household might have read through these instructions. They might have read them religiously. They might have skimmed them. They might
Yeah.
have not read them at all and just like winged
Right.
it when they filled out their forms. Um, that I think in itself is quite powerful. Like we can read them back now with interest, but they would have read these,
Yeah. And the
most
other
of
thing
them.
I have started doing is I've started research, like I've started looking at um what the newspaper coverage was about a census or the register at the when it was happening, right? Like, and there's all these comments about, every time a census rolls around, it's like how the government's trying to steal our information, but oh no, just follow the rules. This is really important. Like all these different opinions being published in local papers about how the people in that contemporary period were actually perceiving the census process or the register or what have you. Like it's fascinating reading, actually.
And the other thing with the newspapers as well, you always get people going, like that they publish instructions for like how to fill it out
Yeah.
correctly because they know people won't actually read the instructions properly. So
Right.
they're like
Right.
trying to get everybody every which way they can. So you have to
Everybody's on
read the
board, right?
instructions on your census form. You actually read it in your morning newspaper as well.
And then
Um,
after the census is taken, they usually publish some kind of local statistics. Like this is what the census this year
exactly,
said about our village or our county versus 10 years ago, right? Like I don't know. I just think it's really interesting. Um,
exactly.
okay, I have one little example that I wanted to share on 1939. It's not a long story, so we'll get back to question of the week here in just a minute. But just to kind of showcase, like, I guess how cool, I suppose, how powerful the 39 register can be, and like how much it can kind of open up. So we're going to start with the 1921 census. Um, this is, and I didn't give myself notes, and now the screen's really small. So this is um, Esther Cooper. she is in the 1921 register in her 40s. So when I first found her in the 1939 register, and this is up in Style in Cheshire, she was employed by Corriebank Mill for a very well, her entire life actually. Um, and the question around her was one that was presented by the Corriebank folks at the National Trust today. They said we have these last three people that worked for the mill, the last three women that worked here, and we think they might all be related, but we're not really sure. We've never been able to prove it. And so we had their names. And so I was researching those three families to see if I could figure that out for them. So I found Esther in the 1921 census. Again, she's in her 40s. So you see this and you kind of assume, like, oh, she probably never married, right? Because she's already in her 40s and she's single and she's still living with her father. And like, yeah, okay. So you kind of make some immediate assumptions. Well, of course, I was wrong, or else she wouldn't be the example for today. She does get married. She gets married in 1938. And perfect. So I know Esther Cooper married Henry Saunders in 1938. So in the 1939 register, she's definitely going to be Esther Saunders. Fantastic. I know I'm not looking for her maiden name. I'm looking for a married name. That's important, obviously, because your name search changes, right? So I do find her in the 1939 register. But much to my surprise, she is listed under both Saunders and the surname Foote. Now, this woman married for the first time in the 1940s. She lived in this community her entire life. Um, she is employed by Corriebank Mill the entire time. So we know in 1939 that at some point she gets married again. She has a second marriage, right? Because that is one of the beautiful things about the 1939 registers that recorded all of the women's marriages. And you can see it if you zoom in, you can really see that Saunders is crossed off and Foote is written in over the top. Foote's really clear in the image, but Saunders is a little bit more obscure. But that is indeed her. And number of her family members in the household surrounding her. So we went back, we were able to find her second marriage, which occurs in August of 1950. Thanks to the 1939 register, we know that she had two marriages, and we know each of those names, and we know it's her because we have her exact birth date from a number of different records, including the 39 register. We also have her place of employment, and she's, again, in Style her entire life. The original question we were asked was whether or not she was related to these other last two employees. And we were able to pinpoint, even in this more modern context, thanks to the 1939 register, that in fact she is related. She is Esther Cooper. You see on the left side of your screen on the tree, she married Saunders and then married a man named Foote. She is first cousin once removed to Isabella Kinghorn, who is first cousin to Mary Mildred Brown, who married Eric Evans. So all three of them are cousins, and they were the last three employees at the mill. And it's like one of my favorite pictures ever because they're in the newspapers. And the National Trust was like, we're not really sure, but we think they're related. What are you able to do? And we were actually able to prove the connection, which is great. Thanks in large help actually, to the 1939 register. That's my
Yeah,
story.
that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. I love
It
that
was great
story.
actually, because they had all these records they had employment records, and they were like, well, even Mary Mildred, right? It was one of the other three. They were like, Mary shows up as an employee, but then she kind of just drops off the register, and then a Mary Brown suddenly pops in, and we don't know if they're the same woman. And thanks to 1939 and marriage records, of course, we're able to show that she is in fact the same woman. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's such, I don't think, obviously, when records like the 1939 register were originally taken, you know, their purpose was not to help us out,
No,
you
too
know,
bad, huh?
8 decades later. But it's insane to me how useful all of these like idiosyncrasies, I guess, of the
Mm,
of the collection, how useful those are to us. Like the fact that it includes updates to names, you
hmm.
know, particularly for women who got married, you know, that solved that mystery for you.
Yeah.
The fact that it includes full dates of birth, the fact that it includes whether you were an evacuee or an early land girl. And I don't know if you mentioned this while I was out of the room, but I believe we at Findmypast are the only place where you can search by civilian role and special interest group, or at least special
I
interest group.
last time I checked, that was true.
Yeah.
Yeah. The,
This is
the
pretty
land
cool.
girl thing actually struck my memory. I should have shared that one too. There was I found a really cool household. It's a farm, and it was this girl who joined the land army. And then I want to say her aunt did as well. And then maybe her mom. All three, I believe, were registered with the land army, but the mom was the actual landowner and owned the farm. And then the other two had requested to be assigned to that farm, right? So when you open the 1939 register, you have, I think it was three different people were land girls. One was her daughter, and the other two were unrelated. And it's this entire female household working this farm with assigned land girls, like, already there, because of course 1939 register was taken after the land army was already brought back up into service. And so, like, it's just this really interesting family grouping of, like, this woman running a farm, which in and of itself is notable. And then you have a number of family members there who are helping, who have moved there to help with the farm. And then you have like, I think it was two unrelated land girls in addition, who are assigned to the farm. So, like, it's like an entire story of the home front effort, like, on this one location. It's a really cool one. Yeah.
We do have a couple of thoughts in the comments about how frustrating it is when you know someone has
Yeah.
died and you have to wait for their record to be opened. We totally understand that. It's just something we have to do. We have to get proof that that person has passed away, or they
Yeah.
pass 100 years old.
We did talk about that a little bit while you were dealing with it,
You
Ellie.
did
So,
fantastic.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
The other thing that they're discussing in the comments here, you guys, are about people who die abroad and how you use that as, I don't know whether you discussed that as well, but
We haven't.
no, we haven't. Cool.
No, we
But
haven't.
yeah, if you want to go to the relevant authority where that person passed away to get a copy of their death certificate, you can do that. We do also accept, I believe, I mean, this is more relevant for people who died as civilians in World War II, Commonwealth War Graves Commission records.
Mm-hmm.
We do accept that as proof of death in case that's of use to anybody.
Yeah. The one about people who go abroad and die internationally, it can be a little bit trickier, right? Because one of the great parts about research in the UK is the National Register and, like, the what am I trying to say? Civil registration. Um, Not every country has that kind of national um, list, right, of birth, marriage, death, and the accessibility of death records in the UK is quite a lot better actually than most places. So in the United States, you have to go to each individual state and understand what their rules are. Um, and in Canada, I'm fairly sure it's by province, but it's been a long time, so don't quote me on that. Yeah, it just kind of depends on where they ended up, right? So it can definitely be challenging, but worth it.
Yeah. And basically, if anybody watching has not tried the 1939 register yet, whether it's for your own family or whether it's just to research early land girls or who else was an ARP warden in the area that you used
Hmm.
to live in, like, so, say you live in like Hull now, like, who were the volunteers helping keep your community safe 80 years ago? I think that could be quite a powerful thing to do, to go and have a look at and to remember these people, and just go and use it while we've made it free would be my
Yeah, totally.
suggestion. It is,
Yep.
in case you haven't, in case we haven't got this got this across strongly enough, it's an incredible resource.
Just in case we hadn't mentioned that part,
Just in
right?
case.
I do. There's one other comment here from our friend Scorpion over on YouTube, and I wanna pull this up. They asked, I was wondering about my grandmother's record in land girl service because there's a story of her friend Alice, who a Nazi got smart with, and she apparently killed him with a pitchfork. And I'd like to verify. So I would question that because I couldn't imagine Nazis being on English soil. The only place we know that they were obviously was in Guernsey and the Channel Islands, which were occupied. But other than that, I don't know. I'm not sure. Um, it would definitely not be listed on her land girl service card, or at least I've never seen anything like that on the land girl
Newspapers.
army cards. I was going to say newspapers, but the official cards, as far as I'm aware, do not document any kind of, like, interaction or story of that nature. So the
Mm.
only shot you probably have is newspapers. So I would start with the Women's Land Army service cards, figure out where she was stationed, and where she served. Then do a search in that area on those cards for anyone named Alice, see if you can pinpoint the individual. And then you need to move that story over to newspapers. Although um, it it feels like maybe something that was blown out of proportion. Most stories have some kind of grain of truth in them. So she might have had an interaction with somebody and possibly attacked somebody with a pitchfork. I'm not going to say that's not unrealistic, but I would question a lot of bits of those stories. But that's probably your best route, is to start with the WLA cards, see if you can identify Alice herself based on what you know about your grandmother, and then move over to newspapers from there. We had a couple other questions. Um, trying to, and I, oh, this is true. Yeah, Karen raises a good point. She could have been, they could have been in a prison camp. Very, yep. Thank you, Karen. Absolutely. Trent Park, for example, for officers. So, and POWs often worked on farms. Andrew, thank you. Thank you for that. You can tell I probably need another cup of coffee, but yeah, we'll see what happens today. I think that's it, Ellie.
We've got through an awful lot today. I'm proud. I say I'm proud of us, that you've done most of the work. I've just come along for the ride.
I feel like there was a question about Scotland, but I think it got answered in the chat.
It did, yeah,
Okay,
it
good.
did. You guys are great at answering each other's questions and helping each other out. There was a question about whether there was a version of the 1939 Register for Scotland, and I
Right.
think it was
Okay.
Heather who responded, going, yes, it is available, but it's quite expensive. Or was it Kathy who said? Anyway, that, guys, as usual, like, thank you for helping each other out with your questions while we
Yes.
natter.
Well, we just have a natter. Yeah. Right. So I think that brings us to the end. The 1939 Register is free on Findmypast. Someone asked what the date was. It is available until May 8th. So we have quite a long time, just over a month, for you to play around. I think it's the first time we've ever done a free access for that long of a time.
Yeah, it's quite
That's
unusual,
quite
but we know
cool. Yeah.
that, it's such a big year this year. It's 80 years since VE Day. It's going to be 80 years since the liberation of the Channel Islands.
Mm-hmm.
It's so yeah, that's why we've done it. So everybody has
Yeah.
the chance to go and find out some of these cool, like, beginning of World War II stories. And it's amazing, like, if you can find your family in the 1939 Register, that could be the springboard you need to go and find out more about your family's Second World War story. So it's a good starting point. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So with that, we're going to close it out. Have a great weekend, everybody. Get in there and dig around and let us know what you find. Join us in the Find My Past forum to share your stories, and your World War II stories in particular, I think, is the focus right now. We'd love to hear from you. So good luck, and we'll see you next week.